Nice to see you again on this beautiful day. This time with a quote from Frederick Douglass. I prefer to be true to myself, even at the hazard of incurring the ridicule of others, rather than to be false and to incur my own abhorrence. Like, this very much speaks to self-respect and authenticity. And what do you think about the quote, and especially about the story of Frederick Douglass?
Amazing. Yeah, you were sharing some or refreshing some details about his own journey, being a slave that escaped and then speaking out against slavery even while people were trying to capture him. And so much more than just mere ridicule of others. He was putting his whole life on the line to speak his truth and to speak a truth that he felt was deeply important, that was deeply important. And so, as a model, as an example, it's just awesome to think about how he embodied this trait of nonconformity and authenticity and just full commitment to his truth at any cost. And I think now we have it much easier to live this compared to what the situations he was in, but yet still being nonconformists, speaking our truth in an environment where everybody around us is pushing for something different or expecting or demanding something different is very upstream in our psychology. We kind of have to go very much against our own grain to be deeply nonconformist and high agency in this way. My question for you is, what foundations do you think give us the capacity for this nonconformity, for this courage to go against the grain and to speak a truth that might go directly against what we find ourselves around? What foundations give you the courage to unmute yourself? You're muted. There we go.
Now we got a foundation. Okay, my opinion, the self-respect is the foundation to get the courage to speak the truth. And also like the inner calling to a mission greater than yourself. If you see things that are really unjust and you don't speak out against the things that are really unjust, then you may be complicit in the wrongdoing of other people as well, because you don't put yourself between the wrongdoers and the people who suffer. And in the case of Frederick Douglass, it is a very impactful thing to think about, because he was a slave. He saw how badly the slaves have been treated in America, and this was like a really high agency move, like you said, to flee firsthand and then to speak out against slavery, because there was a movement recognizing that it's unjust to keep slaves like own human beings and not just be brethren with each other, because we all are human beings and have this worth of and the right to not be touched by anyone. Like, you had to fight for this right, and now we live in a society where we take it for granted. But it is good to remember that there's something, if you have a higher mission that calls you, and if you have the self-respect to speak the truth, I believe this is the foundation. What do you think is the foundation for it, Peyton?
Self-respect is absolutely a part. The mission and knowing your values is a part. I think that first, in order to know what your deepest truths are, the things that you will stand for, the things that you will pay a price for, you must know yourself. You must have this time that you dedicate to reflection. And I personally find journaling particularly important and helpful to clarify my own thoughts, my own values, and how they apply and how they show up in different situations, and what is the right action to take according to my values in different circumstances. But other people, of course, do it in different ways. But I think this intentionality about who we are and what really is the most important thing to us. Because I think if we don't decide that, and if we don't actually look to clarify that, then we will never recognize when something must be stood up for, when a price must be paid for our higher good. And I think the other part of this that I think is more common in most of our lives who aren't trying to abolish slavery, where there's actually just situations where it's our truth to be authentic in this situation rather than going with just the opinion of the crowd around us. So lower stakes, it's not our life mission, but yet there's these intense or subjectively intense social pressures for conformity around us. And it is most authentic, most true to ourselves in these regular situations that just come up socially in the course of our lives to either be untrue to ourselves and conform with the crowd, or be true to ourselves and incur a price. I think that the source for this self-respect and the source for this ability to stand strong and to readily lean into whatever that is a recognition, or in my experience, a recognition of our intuition, a recognition of the voice of wisdom and of actually the divinity that is within everybody, but within us, that we learn to connect with in our own life. And I believe that having a true faith and a true relationship with that divinity within us, the voice of wisdom that we can tap into, the voice of creativity and flow, is an aspect of that faith, is to recognize that if it's that voice, if it's the voice of guidance, if it's the source, then we should listen to that voice over any human voice that we run into, if it truly is that source and we know that we are recognizing the right thing and it's not just following our desires, our ego, our stories, but it's actually recognition of the higher wisdom within us. And I think that knowing to see that, knowing to feel that, and paying attention over and over in our lives when we do follow that voice, to see from real world experimentation and experience that yes, I do prize this source above anybody else's opinion. Even if there's 10 opinions at once, I prize this source. That is, I think, a flexible foundation for the random situations that we didn't plan for yesterday, to speak out against this thing that comes up in this social group today or whatever. But that inner GPS, that inner guide, is always with us. And so if we learn to feel that when it comes out, and we train ourselves to say, trust this more than I care about the immediate consequences of whatever comes from this interaction. That, I think, is the all situations applied foundation of authenticity and of living in our truth as it really comes up in our everyday world. How do you think about this commitment and this sort of prizing one voice over the potential others that may come up?
Is an act of courage actually to go against the grain and follow your inner compass. And this reminds me of the picture I saw lately in the blog article High Agency from George Mack, I guess, where Alfred Landmesser was the only German guy who did not the Nazi salute
Yes.
in a rally where everybody rose his hands, just followed each other. And to go against the grain like that, because this is not my values, I cannot relate with that, is like an act of courage like no other. And to speak up against the social conformity, which pressures you into some actions or some thinking, I respect that highly. And it's an act of courage. And for that, like you said, you have to know yourself. You have to really deeply reflect about your values and how you relate to the world, how you want to develop yourself, and how you want to see the world grow, how you want to relate to other people as well. And there's this experiment done where there's a cultural norm, experimented with a cultural norm of standing up when other people come into the room.
Yeah.
And two actors stand up, and the guy who's fresh comes into the room, and then bit by bit more people come, adapt this cultural habit, and then all the actors are replaced by people who don't know this is acting, and the people still stand up like that. So even if you don't know why you do that and do it, and maybe it's time for a little bit of reflection, of stepping outside and maybe think outside the box, because you never know who gave you the box and why did someone gave you this box. And it is like in media, if you open up your smartphone and try different apps where you consume the news, every news channel tries to give you some framing of what is happening inside the world right now and gives you this box. And if you only consume what this box says, then you will think inside the box without even knowing you're inside a box. So you have to, if you want to think outside the box, also consume different content from time to time. But not mindlessly believe everything you see, because everybody who tries to push an agenda tries to give you a box. Even if anybody tries to sell you something, they try to frame it in a certain kind of box. Read the book from Robert Cialdini, like The Principles of Persuasion. And you see the salespeople, they actively frame their message to you and the way they relate to you to give you a box where it becomes much more likely that you are pressured and triggered into buying the stuff they want to sell. And even before that, there's another book, Persuasion, where you can frame the experience of the people before you give them the box. So you have a bigger box even inside the smaller box that people give you. And it is really a box inside a box inside a box. It takes reflection. It takes courage to step outside of these boxes and try to think for yourself and try to decide for yourself what is true, and then act according to your inner compass with courage, which takes a lot amount of courage to really pursue.
There is no
What do you
doubt.
think, Peyton?
I think that another element of this too that's noteworthy over time, and I think this is a part of why, among other things, when we're younger, when we're in school, which are basically socialization training devices, where and conformity training devices, we find it far harder to be nonconformist and to endure or subject ourselves or expose ourselves to the ridicule or outcasting of our peer group, especially as we're younger. And a part of this that I think we haven't seen play out so much, a pattern that we haven't witnessed so much when we were younger, is that there are large deltas between the short-term primary effects of speaking our truth, being authentic, going against the grain, and enduring being the odd one out in a crowd, versus the secondary and long-term effects of being somebody that always is true to themselves and that is not swayed by the opinions of whoever happens to be in the room around them, who knows their inner compass and follows it and listens to the voice within over the voice of those around them. And I think a core part of this one is self-esteem is the reputation you have with yourself. And so when, even though this people in the room may not, like the people that have your that you are aligned with, may not be in the room to witness you conform to being not true to yourself in this room, you are there witnessing it. You are there witnessing it. And so your perception of your own truth, your perception of your own strength, your perception of the degree to which you truly do honor the source within, your perception of the degree to which you truly are aligned with your values and live aligned with your values. This is shaped by the moments when it's actually tested. And the moments when it's actually tested is not when everybody around you is giving you pats on the back for saying the right words. The moments that it's actually tested are when it's difficult to do this, when you're not going with the stream, when you have to pay some form of a price or take some form of a risk to be true to yourself. This is when you really witness who you are. This is when you really witness what your values actually mean to you, not just a story you tell yourself about them. And when you witness that over time, you do prize your values over your fears. You do have the courage to live and speak your truth, even in the face of pressures, even when there's a price to be paid, even when there's risks to be taken. The empowerment that you gain from within over that, from witnessing yourself follow this pattern over and over and over. This is what makes you a better leader. This is what makes you a better creator. This is what makes you a better friend. This is what makes you stronger in so many ways and more deeply aligned in living in a way that is sort of in alignment with the core of your being. And it is a great source of strength that's subtle, and it's so long-term secondary consequences. It's such from a pattern, and it's from all these very direct short-term pains, short-term discomforts of enduring this and enduring this and going through this, or feeling this way in this situation, or feeling this feeling of ridicule or discomfort or whatever that we Homo sapiens are wired to really find uncomfortable. Paying these direct short-term costs for this intangible long-term whatever. But the truth is that the cumulative value of that long-term benefit that we get from authenticity, from living aligned with our values, from paying the price when there's a price to be paid to be in our truth, to be authentic, this long-term benefit is so much greater. It empowers us so much more than the negative price that we pay for earning this in our own eyes over time, even if nobody else is watching. That's the most important thing that I think is commonly forgotten about, is it doesn't have to be witnessed by somebody else. There doesn't have to be some cool hidden camera of you saying the right thing for this to cash in. That doesn't matter. What other people's opinions are of you really do not matter in the long run. They're thinking about themselves. Everybody's like, nobody's going to actually remember that cool thing you said or that whatever, but you will. Like, you will know if you are this type of person who truly is who truly pays the price when there's a price to be paid. And the other side of this that I think is very powerful is this amazing wisdom saying from the Tao Te Ching that says, care about other people's approval and you will be their prisoner. And if you have this experience over and over of there being this paper tiger of other people not liking you, and you constantly shrink down from this paper tiger, you constantly conform and bend and turn into a chameleon just to fit in and just to be liked by whatever 8 people happen to be within 5 meters of you, then this paper tiger feels like a real tiger. This paper tiger feels real and scary, and like you can't tolerate people not liking you. And by leaning into it and saying, fuck it, I don't care if these people like me. I don't care if I'm ridiculed by the people in the room. I don't care if none of these people want to talk to me after I speak the truth. I'm going to have the courage to say or do what I think is right in the moments that it's actually called for, in the moments that it's useful. Not saying that we want to be dogmatic and rigid about these things and try to be nonconformist for the sake of being nonconformist. That's its own trap and its own ego thing. But when it's truly called for, when wisdom is pulling us there, if we lean into that paper tiger, we realize that it's not a real tiger. We realize that we can take it. We realize that we're stronger for it, not weaker for it. And if we can let go of needing people to like us, we no longer are their prisoner. If we care about people's approval, we will be their prisoner. They can use our emotions, they can use our fears like little strings and pull us this way and pull us that way and get us to do this and manipulate us into this and get us to shrink down from doing this. We won't be comfortable taking certain risks, and it will diminish us and shrink us and vastly limit our path in life, vastly limit who we are capable of being, the things that we are capable of doing, and the ways that we can give our gifts, the ways that we can be useful to ourselves, to the world, the ways that we can be who we would aspire to be for our family. And by not accepting these chains made of clouds, these chains made of clouds that we can actually just shuck off, and it's our agency, it is our choice to claim it. This is the foundation of a greater freedom to empower ourselves in our lives, and one that we must claim for ourselves. Nobody will give us agency. We must claim agency, and we claim it by leaning in, by facing the fear, by feeling what this paper tiger attack feels like over and over in the situations that actually call for it. Not just to be an asshole, not just to be special and get attention and feel good about how badass we are for saying something that goes against the grain, but actually when it is our deepest truth, when these rare situations arise, these are the moments when we have the option to claim our own freedom, to rise to a different level and to free ourselves from these shackles of conditioning and social approval. So yeah, that's pretty much all my thoughts on this type of stuff. What else do you got to say, my man? Any closing from you?
Well, what your thoughts reminded me of was the saying of Nassim Taleb that even love without sacrifice is like theft. And
Yeah.
speaking the truth without having like a harsh time to do it, like if it's challenging, then it's like not really leading to enhancing the truth, not leading to personal evolution, for example. And the harder it is, the better the moment's potential to forge a new you, a new evolutionary step inside of your life. And another thing is, I read the essays from Montaigne lately again. He said, okay, the greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. And this requires courage, this requires self-acceptance, but also self-judgment. And it has to be a balance in terms of, okay, I judge that I'm not a detail-oriented person, but I accept that, and I better leave the details to someone else so I can focus on the creative stuff, for example, or the thinking or the reasoning behind it. So it requires to accept one's imperfections as a human being as well, and also let go of the self-deception. Not lie to yourself. because, as you said, self-respect is the reputation you have with yourself. And if you witness yourself treating other people poorly, then you lose self-respect because you are inside a box. Just because you want to gain something out of a situation, not give the place to the old lady in the bus, for example, not stand up, or not hold the elevator open for the rushing guy who's coming in just because you want to be 1 second earlier in a meeting or whatever. This is also kind of self-deception with yourself. You're not treating other people the way you would want to be treated. Actively choose the path which is easier but not leading to more self-respect, because you deceive yourself in, this is actually good what I do because it's for me. No, we are here on this earth for increasing kindness and love, and not just to fill our own pockets, for example. So self-respect also increases if you are kinder towards others and show to yourself that you actually do acts of kindness. So you increase your self-respect as well.
And this does gesture me toward, what is the golden mean with authenticity? What is the golden mean with living our truth? And I think that the golden mean with authenticity is a little bit, I think there's two aspects of it, actually. I think on one side, the impeccability of our word, and literally never speaking one untrue word, never doing one act that goes against what we would respect ourselves doing. We don't want perfectionism to be a source of shame for ourselves, but it is a totally possible aspiration, and not one that I think we should forego or rule out, to actually never speak one untrue word in the days of our lives, and to have that be our North Star of perfect truth. However, and that's with the sort of via negativa, the not doing what diminishes you by speaking something that you know to be untrue. On the other side of it, though, the speaking up, the actively going against the grain, the if we're not asked to go out and say or do something that creates a situation of, like, for instance, negative situations within our lives, this is where we want to do this when we are called to do this. We want to do this in accordance with what our intuition tells us. The way that we can actually get pulled out of the mean is when we start to develop an identity and an ego around how I am such a crusader for this and that idea, and every time there's an opportunity I must say something, no matter what the situation, no matter what the cause and effect will be, no matter if it fits the time, no matter what the cost to all the other potential things that I could be doing with my time and energy. It's this rigid, dogmatic stance toward viewing ourselves as some warrior of our opinion, that everybody needs to know my opinion. My opinion is the most important thing in the world, and I need to shove my opinion everywhere that there's an opportunity to shove my opinion. This is a pitfall, and this is not actually living authentically in a healthy and balanced and good way for ourselves and for others. This does not strengthen us. It actually causes us to be rigid and therefore fragile, and it doesn't serve us in our lives to be out of balance. So, on one hand, never speak a lie, never say something that you know is untrue, or that is not true to you in order to conform or to fit in. On the other hand, this does not mean that we should develop a opinion warrior mentality and need to go shove and insert our opinion every single place that we possibly can and shout it and create tons of circles of negativity in our lives because we're too attached to an identity and an ego that may not fit the actual circumstances we find ourselves in.
Yeah, it speaks as well to Adam Grant's categorization of preacher mode or the scientist mode. So be the scientist of your life much more than you are the preacher of your life. Just discover who you are instead of preach what you believe. And integrity is basically the value, the highest value. I would choose to decide whether or not to collaborate with a person. If I feel, okay, this person just wants to gain wealth for her own pockets, then I wouldn't choose to collaborate with her, even if she would be the most intelligent human on earth. No, because eventually, if there's no integrity in her words or in his words, then eventually you will be betrayed. And if this person betrays herself or himself, then eventually also she will betray. So integrity is the key to good collaboration. And for that, you have to be authentic to yourself. And that is also what I strive for.
100%. May we live lives of integrity. May we find the golden mean, and may we follow the calling within above the voices of those around us. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, my friend. Pleasure as always. And this is a wonderful topic as a sort of reminder to stay true to ourselves in our own lives, which is such an important source of empowerment and capacity. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you on the next one, man.
Thank you very much, my friend. See you soon.
See you soon.